Mr. Genselman,
Yes.
you're able to start the meeting.
All right. Do we have everybody?
Ms. Remke has
Debbie's here.
Okay.
yes.
All righty. Okay. All right. Let's call to order the Design Review Board meeting for Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. Zendaya, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Would you please call roll?
Ms. Lippert, Ms. Lippert, I believe you're muted.
Yeah, but I'm all via phone.
Oh, there you are. Thank you. Ms. Foss,
Yes, here.
Mr. McAllister,
Here.
Ms. Remke,
Here.
Mr. Molesky,
Here.
Mr. Karstens,
Here.
Mr. Genselman.
Here.
Thank you.
To approval of agenda, does staff have any changes to the agenda?
No, sir, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
We have a motion from Mr. McAllister. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a second from Ms. Foss. So board members, if you have any changes to the agenda, state them when you're called upon by Zendaya. Otherwise, vote yes or no to approve the agenda. Zendaya, will you please call roll?
Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Molesky,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Genselman.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
passes unanimously. We'll move on to approval of the minutes from the meeting of October 27th, 2020. Everyone has read them, I assume. So may I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll approve the minutes as stated.
All right, we have a motion for approval from Ms. Remke. Is there a second?
A second.
Second from Ms. Foss. Same thing. Board members, as roll is called, if you have any changes to the minutes, please state them. Otherwise, vote yes or no. Zendaya, please call roll.
Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Molesky,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Genselman.
Yes, thank you. Meeting minutes pass unanimously. Next, we'll move on to citizen comments. Zendaya?
Mr. Chairman, public comments concerning today's agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the town's open town hall portal. There was one comment submitted through the portal that was provided to you. Citizens were also provided the option to sign up to give public comment during the meeting by phone. There were no requests for public comment.
All right, thank you. Chris, this is one of the very few times we've had citizen comments while we've been Zooming. What do we do with those at this time?
You have a couple of choices. We can read them now because it fits into the agenda, or you can read them at the appropriate agenda item, or because it has been submitted to you earlier, you're aware of the public comment, or the board should be aware of that.
Okay, so the comments that we got are regarding an item further down the list. So when we get to that item, we will address it at that time. And if I forget, could someone
Staff will remind you.
Yeah, please remind me. It's Tuesday. I'm always forgetful on Tuesdays. So,
Not a problem.
all right. All right. So we will, there's no unfinished business. So we will move on to new business. Alteration addition for 28 Shelter Cove Lane, DRB 002198-2020. Chris?
Okay, on your screen now, the building or the site is circled in red. This is Shelter Cove Town Center. You'll see the marshes of Broad Creek to the upper left of your screen with Shelter Cove Community Park running between. Well, let me see if I can get the cursor out. Shelter Cove Community Park in this area where the cursor is. And then again, the building or that portion of the building that's in concern is encircled in red. The applicant is proposing the following changes to 28 Shelter Cove Lane. 1. The louvers on the bar side. The applicant proposes to remove the top vertical slat louver section and move the louvers back per the suggestion of the DRB at the last meeting under the existing marble countertop and paint the louvers universal khaki, which is the proposed color of the building. Planters. The applicant proposes to install brick planters between the columns on the patio side. This is the opposite side. These will replace the planters, the mobile planters that the applicant proposed at the last meeting. Dimensions shall be 60 inches by 24 inches high by 19 inches deep, planted with boxwood. 3, the bar area. The applicant proposes to change the bar area that was previously damaged to include a locking cabinet for liquor and a new TV. The bar will be painted to match the building trim. A portion of which the applicant proposes to paint the exterior of the building. I'm sorry. Excuse me. 4, the awnings. The applicant proposes to replace the awning fabric with black bean. This should match the adjacent awning, and we'll look at that. And 5, the logo signage. The applicant proposes altering the location of the signage, which would be covered under a separate application. But per the discussion at the last meeting, that may affect the form of the awning, which we'll talk about later. Outdoor fans. The applicant proposes to replace the existing fans with a unit that has a nickel finish and a mahogany fan blade, and we'll see those cut sheets. And 8, wall lanterns. The applicant proposes to add new wall lanterns at the interior faces of the existing columns and on the walls. And we'll look at those locations in a minute. Staff recommends denial for the following reasons. Given the narrow width of the proposed brick planter, staff suggests the box planters from the October 27th application be reconsidered. In thinking about this additionally, the DRB may want to consider even suggesting that louvers to match the bar side be added to the restaurant side. 2, the proposed bar covers the window that balances the building exterior. Staff suggests the bar be detailed to look more like shutters when closed and eliminate any glass that's left. And we'll see that again in the slides. I'll point that out. 3, if the current sign is not going to be replaced in this location, the height and slope of the awning should be reconsidered to mitigate that void. And we'll look at examples of the awning height already in the area. 4, staff recommends approval of the fans and light fixtures provided, that the light fixture will not exceed color temp and brightness allowed. A note be added to the plan that no conduit will be visible on the columns to the light fixtures. And three, it has been pointed out that these light fixtures are not shielded. The light source is not shielded. So at a minimum, the glass should be frosted or the light source shielded per the design guide. So we're going to start looking at some pictures of the building. This is the facade perpendicular to the park. So to the left of this awning is the awning that is black that we'll look at. It's a sunglass retailer. And this is, again, looking at that sign and the location of that sign on the wall and how it relates to the height of the awning. These are existing conditions. This is the facade that's parallel to the park or facing the park. On the right is the bar area. On the left is the dining area. This is the dining area. The proposal is to place brick planters between these brick column bases. This is an illustration in the area of the height of the shutter of the awnings and how that affects the relationship to the sign for that store. So the Talbot's signage is so high up on the wall that there's more space and that space is balanced by the awning over the window. So it's a steep slope on that awning. Also included or illustrated in this slide are the louvers and their relationship to the columns and how they're set back from the face of the column. Another illustration of louvers in the area and column relationship. Again, this is looking at the building and the surrounds. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see the Woody's Sunglass Hut. The awning will match that awning color, and the proposed site is right to the right over here of that storefront. You can also see below the French bakery entrance, as well as the Belk's entrance on the bottom. And that Belk's entrance, you pick up the bar area for 28. Okay, the applicant is proposing to paint the building universal khaki, and this illustrates where that will go, and that the trim will remain the same color as it is, as well as the louvered at the top of the roof up here. Again, on the bottom, an illustration of the connection between, or the visual link between the awning and the sign over the entrance door. Okay, this is the proposed floor plan. At the bottom on the plan, you can see on the right-hand side where the brick planters are proposed to be located. And then on the bar side, the louvers would be set back. And you can see the location of the proposed light fixtures. So they would be on these columns. And on the wall here, as well as on the wall on each side of the bar and on the columns. Cut sheet of that light fixture on the wall, light fixture on the columns, the proposed image of the proposed fan, cut sheet for that fan, And this is the bar that they're proposing over the window on the bar side. So this would house a TV in that center space, here, and liquor bottles would be stored on each side and below it. The window, as it is, would remain at the top. You can see a section through the bar over here and an illustration at the bottom, which we're going to look a little bit closer at. I'm sorry. We'll do that in a minute. Sorry, I had my sequence messed up. So this is the proposed louver relocation at the bar area. So you can see it's set back under the countertop here, and it's set back with the column base proud of the louver. And this is the proposed location of the planter. Staff is concerned that the width of this planter is just super narrow, and that is suggesting that either the movable planters be used, or that the same detail on the bar side be duplicated on this side as well with the louvers. So here's the bar illustration of the bar. So this is the bar that's open. This is the TV, where the TV would be located, and then the liquor bottles would be around below and on each side of it. So this is open. This is the bar closed. The windows at the top would remain visible. Staff is suggesting that maybe that the louvers just need to be carried up and the windows covered up completely when it's closed. Again, the bar open and closed. That concludes staff's presentation. Are there any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Just getting unmuted here. No. Well, hang tight. I'm sure when we go through the list. Well, actually, just to define the scope since we looked at this last week, the bar was not in it last week. Correct? The bar
That
was
is
not
correct.
part of it last week. Or,
That is correct.
Last meeting. Okay.
Yes, sir. That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
And in the prior meeting, we had looked at box planters and not the brick planters. But we had discussed the awning, the louvers, and the paint color last meeting, from what I remember. So if anybody has any questions as we go along, go ahead and ask Chris. But we will open the floor up for the applicant. If the applicant is present, could you please identify yourself?
Mr. Robertson, Mr. Druden?
Yes, Mr. Durden's here.
All right. Anybody else with you, Webb?
Yes, David Robertson's with me, DR Design.
Can you hear
Okay.
Mr. Genton? Hear me?
You're cutting in and out.
I'm sorry. I'm on Wi. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I listened in on the last meeting and took note of the comments of the board members and tried to address the planters and the louvers according to those comments. And I believe that these louvers resolve the issues that we had discussed. And I believe that the planters, I believe that they work visually. And I think that for the size of the boxwoods they intend to put there, that they're not insufficiently sized, but they're definitely not big enough to put anything larger. Um, as far as the lights go, I heard the comments from the staff about putting the bulbs behind frosted lenses or some other fixture, which I understand according to the guidelines. Does the staff have questions for me about it?
Yeah, what we do, our process is when you are done adding to Chris's narrative, we'll go one by one to each member, and if they have any questions, they will direct them towards you.
I think Chris has done a good job of presenting what's been submitted, so I don't have anything further to add. I will wait patiently for your comments.
All right, great, thank you. So let's start off with somebody's beeping. All right, okay, let's start off with Mr. McAllister.
All right. I'll start by commenting on the louvers. I think you've done a good job addressing our comments from the previous meeting. I think it is a little less fussy without the vertical slats. And I think it looks much better, recessed back from the columns. So I'm good with the louvers as shown. As far as the planters, I believe it was Ms. Fawcett made a comment last meeting that I thought was really good, just about how, we had this modular planter that was a different color. It was just kind of introducing another material into it and kind of looking for a more consistent appearance. I think the brick planters does that. You've got a consistent material of the brick. I'm also a little concerned about the width, as staff mentioned. I think you've got like 7 inches of plantable space, and I certainly understand why you're stepping the planter back from the columns. I think that's the right thing to do. I personally like the brick planters better than the modular ones, just from use of consistent materials. I think, realistically, your boxwood could only be a 1 gallon, and it's probably going to be a little underwhelming just because of the width of the planter. And I know staff in their presentation just pointed out that, it could be a louver in this area. And I think that would look better. I don't think the planter is going to achieve much in terms of, having successful plant material in there. So I'm okay with the brick, but I would prefer to see the louvers. That's just me. I think that would give it a more consistent appearance and elevation. As far as the awning goes, I know there was a good bit of discussion about how much facade there's going to be. When the New York City Pizza logo is gone, we're just going to have this big expanse of facade. So I think that was a good observation, and that's the one thing that kind of jumps out at me that hasn't really been addressed. If the fabric is just going to be swapped out on the awning, I'm a little concerned. I think it probably wants to be a little taller vertically. And as far as the bar area goes, I actually like what you've done. I'm good with it, but I will certainly defer to what our architects think about this area. And then, not to be redundant, but the light fixtures, we really don't want to see an exposed light source. I think at minimum the glass would need to be frosted, as staff suggested. And I think that's all of my comments.
All right, thank you, David. Mr. Karstens.
Thank you, Chairman. I too, I'm not going to echo anything as far as the louvers. I think that bar top on that end is much better situated than this submittal. While we're on that side of this complex, I was concerned that the light fixtures adjacent to the bar, at least shown in the graphic, don't match the other fixtures that are proposed. These look more like goosenecks. I know right now that the fixtures there match the other side that are existing. So I'd like to see some consistency with that, between each side as far as those wall fixtures. I understand that there's a theme as far as an oyster bar and that coastal kind of feel, but we also need some consistency in those fixtures, especially if we're not going to see a cut sheet for those particular ones. I'm not necessarily going to hit on the awning, but I will talk about those planters. I think David had a lot of good points. Not against brick as a consistency material, and I actually looked at Jane restaurant out front of Shelter Cove, and they have a low brick planter that I think it appears it has the boxwoods in it. Boxwoods, we're a little warm. They're going to take, there's going to need to be some taken care with those, and they're going to need to be stayed on top of. And aesthetically, I think that the composition's good. I will just say that maintenance-wise, the planters would probably, the planters that were proposed last submittal will probably be easier. The detail that it was presented for the brick planters doesn't necessarily have weep holes or a source if there was going to be any kind of drip irrigation, how that was going to be dealt with. And then I'd be concerned about installing these walls on that patio and not having, in essence, like an escape, almost like a punch through on the bottom of those walls, like you're going to have on the bar side with the louvers. There's an open space underneath there. So if this is solid, that whole space in there becomes a contained space, especially since it's already draining away from the building. So if the brick's going to stay, there's going to need to be some kind of release on the bottom of that wall to allow, just for the sake of cleaning, blowing off that porch, whatever. And then also within the planters themselves, there's either going to need to be a waterproof membrane and some kind of weep holes. Otherwise, you're going to either drown those plants or it's just not, the medium's not going to be consistent for them. So I would say is that David or I should probably review the final details when it comes to those planters, if this is going to move forward, just to help make sure that the drainage is taken care of when it comes to the planters themselves and that patio. So those are my comments. I'd prefer a standalone planters. I'm not opposed to the brick. It's just there's going to need to be an extra review on the detail to make sure that they're functional.
Yeah, do you think the 7.5 inches is enough to sustain a plant?
It's, as David said, that you're going to be putting in some smaller material. So you're either going to need to bump up the number of plants, and they're not necessarily going to get any bigger than what you put them in at, just because of their growth medium being restricted. That, you can provide some depth to it, but, those plants are going to be living within that top 6 to 8 inches for the most part. So it's tight. That, just accounting for the width of the brick really is the thing that's holding this back as far as having more growth. I haven't looked at the ones at Jane out front. Those plants look to be doing all right from street view, but 8 inches is a pretty tight area. You're not going to get much growth on those beyond what they go in and install that, and you're going to have to stay on top of them to make sure they stay healthy. So.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Judd. All right, Ms. Lippert.
So thank you. I appreciate that some of the comments that we voiced last time have been addressed. I'm okay with the different feel for the restaurant area and the oyster bar area as far as louver and brick. However, no, if I understand correctly, no brick has been submitted, no mortar color has been submitted, or am I mistaken on that? Chris?
You are correct. I would assume that it would need to match, but I'm not sure that that's labeled on the drawings.
So to me, that would definitely need to be at least staff approval of the actual brick selection and actual mortar selection, with, I would be recommending a photo documentation of the brick sample next to the existing. I still think that the awning needs to get raised with the signage being proposed to not be above the awning. I agree that basically also because of the element, it should be with the frosted glass, and I think it was a very good comment about the lights at the bar area matching the rest of the lights. Going through my notes here.
I'm sorry, Annette, were you finished?
Sorry, I was just seeing if I had
Oh,
any
okay.
other names on my sheet.
I didn't know if I missed it.
So yes, I think that concludes my comments. I mean, in the sense of agreeing with what else has been said by the other members.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks. Thanks, Annette. Mr. Molesky.
Yes, thank you. Let's see, no particular order. Yeah, my suggestion, I guess, would be with the awning. It's hard to tell exactly how big that transom is above the door, but to me, it seems like there's some good opportunity there to let some more light in and maybe kind of copy what Talbot's did with how Chris had alluded to having like that steeper sloped awning to kind of cover that void. Then this way, from a practical point of view, people driving by, they'll actually be able to read the lettering that you place on the awning. If it's at a steeper slope, it'll raise it up to let some light into the building and fill the void at the same time. So that seems like that potentially could be a good solution. The lights that you're talking about, I see how there's a light on the left and right of the bar, the gooseneck kind. Where are we proposing that particular fixture that you showed me there that looks more like a box? Those will be on the inside of all those columns. Is that what that represents, or is that a chair?
Yes, sir. It's staff's understanding that the columns would have the light fixture on the inside of the columns and on the wall.
David, you can reply to that if that's not correct.
Relation to the bar, goosenecks shown in there are just for filling space to create light in the bar itself is the part that I was submitting for review. Those two are just embellishments to the illustration. The actual fixtures would be the smaller box fixtures that are attached to the columns to have some continuity.
So you're just your submission here is just to add the lights on the left and right of the bar, and the lights that you would be adding are the ones that are shown on the cut sheet. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, the two goosenecks in the illustration are not. They're not accurate. They would actually be the box fixtures.
Okay.
I place of the existing fixtures that were there to create light in the model to show the client the bar itself. But the bar, the carpentry, is the only part of that I was actually submitting for review. And I apologize if I was unclear.
Okay, so in that dining area, there's no lighting there that you're changing or submitting to change. I'm sorry if you didn't hear. I was asking in that outdoor dining area, there is no lighting that we need to review at this time.
Only the lights, the box lights that are on the submittal are going in the dining area.
Yeah,
And
okay.
bar, those would be the same box fixtures there flanking the bar.
Okay, and then are there existing lights in the dining area already, and we're just simply swapping them
Yes.
out?
Yes, next to that door and along the wall, there's a existing sconce light on the wall to be replaced with the larger of the box lanterns.
Okay, so then like what Chris said, then if there's already electrical go there, then there won't be any need for any exposed conduit or cutting into the columns to bring the electric there.
The columns will run the wire through the columns. We won't have any exposed conduits or junction boxes or anything like that.
Okay. As far as those fixtures go, and I appreciate everyone's comment with the frosted glass. Those appear just to be an Edison type bulb, which probably doesn't have much lumens and probably has a very low temperature of 2700 or less or so. I don't know if that still requires them to be frosted or not. You kind of lose the beauty of the Edison bulbs if you mask them with a frosted glass, but just to put that out there. Mr. McAllister made a good comment, and others had followed. I kind of like the consistency of doing louvers at both locations, and especially like you said, with the concerns of potentially trapping water in there. If you were to do louvers at both locations, based on the design of that louver, would the entire louver and the trim around it all be painted that same khaki color, or would just the louvers be khaki and the trim component of it be white like the columns? What was the?
I would do the entire thing in khaki so that it blends in. I don't want it to stand out much. I want people to focus on the bar area and the light rather than the louvers themselves.
Okay. Is there any concern from staff by having a black awning if the neighbors next door also has a black awning, or is it a Shelter Cove covenant where they need to mix it up, or that's not a concern?
It's not a concern of staff that we would have two black awnings side by side.
Okay. The fan, I would question why we're introducing a mahogany material here. We have the brick, we have the tabby, we have the bronze light fixtures, we have the khaki, we have the white. I don't know if that's just introducing another element, just to throw that out there for others to comment on. As far as the bar is concerned, I don't mind that transom window up overhead there. I kind of like that, breaks it up and perhaps lets some light into the inside as well. And then I'm assuming that that nice picture you have there that I'm looking at now, the bar, the same thing. The whole bar would be painted that same khaki color to match the body of the building. Would the trim be white, or again, is everything going to be khaki?
It was my intent that that bar be painted in the same white as the trim so that it would tie in with the trim around it. And I don't want it to completely blend into the wall. And in regard to the mahogany ceiling fan blades,
Yes.
the appearance of those blades ties in thematically with the finish work inside the building. There's a lot of stained wood there that is very close to that mahogany color.
Okay, so you're just trying to introduce that. So the bar picture I'm looking at here, the entire bar, the trim and the siding would be the white color, and then everything I see on the upper bar with the sliding doors, all that is just as shown here, that everything would be white.
That is correct.
Okay, those are my questions and comments for now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, John. Ms. Remke.
Okay, you can hear me, huh? Can you hear me?
You're good.
Hello?
You're good.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Okay. The comment was just made about the mahogany. I was kind of assuming that maybe it matched some of the furniture that's out there. Is that going to be true?
Yeah, you can go ahead and answer, David, if the question's directed to you. You have an open floor.
I do not know what furniture that they have yet for that, whether that matches the mahogany. Can't confirm or deny that.
Okay. I'm good with the box light fixtures. There was a question a while ago that I don't think was really answered. The question was about existing lights in the ceiling. Will there be other lighting other than just these sconces that are on the side walls?
No.
So that's the only lighting is what the sconces are.
That is correct.
Okay.
The
All
bulb
right.
700K
Sorry?
equivalents. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There'll be.
Moving. Go ahead.
I said those will be 4.5 watt LED bulbs, 60 watt equivalents at 2700K.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the louvers and the planters. I'm voting on the side of the planters. Two different spaces there, the louvers for the bar area, and then the planters for the dining area, which I think adds a little bit of sophistication to the dining area. I personally would like to see us go back to the planters rather than the brickwork. And what I'm looking at doesn't show a cut sheet of the planters, but I'm kind of thinking that they're shorter than the brick that is currently drawn on our particular picture. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I think we would have a little bit more vegetation there. And as far as I can see, this is the only planting material that we have for this project. So if we don't go to the planters, we're going to see a lot of brick and cement and wood, and that's it. And we like vegetation. So I'm hoping that we can go with the planters. On the bar area, the shutters, do they slide in front of the bar area and the television set? They slide and lock, or do they fold out and lock, or what?
That's a barn door track system, and they'll have integral lock.
Okay, good. And my last thing on the awning, I would like to see the awning with the steeper slope that more mimics the Talbot's awnings. And I don't know, have we actually learned that you can put the sign on the awning? Because if that turns out not to be acceptable, then you have no sign. So I don't think we can answer that question now, but I'm just thinking that we need to establish if that is acceptable.
Is Shay, are you out there?
Yes, sir.
Can you answer that question as part of this discussion? What signage would be able to go on that awning?
Currently, the sign system for Shelter Cove, I do not believe they have any signage on awnings. That would be up to the property owner and to the review of Shelter Cove ARB to make that change.
Okay, but there's nothing, best way to put it, within your jurisdiction or our jurisdiction on what the limits would be on that?
There's nothing that would prohibit it, but it would be up to Shelter Cove as to whether or not they would want that.
Okay. David, have you discussed that at all with Shelter Cove or Webb, either of you?
I have not.
All right.
I have not either.
Annette, okay, Annette, we'll come back to you. I'm sorry I interrupted. Debbie.
Debbie.
Sorry. Yeah, Debbie, go ahead and finish, and then And then net, we'll be able to have a second round on some of these things. Go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah, I think those were all my comments, so we're good. I just, I don't see any awnings out there now that have signage on them, so I'm a little bit concerned that if that's disallowed, we might have to come back for a sign review.
Okay, that's a good point.
But we'll see what happens.
All right.
The only reason I was asking to kind of jump in is because I don't think the signage is being proposed on the awning anymore. Per the submittal, it's being proposed on the glass.
She's right, Annette's
So that's
right.
why I was trying to cut in.
Annette's right. They said they were going to put it on the side glasses.
Oh,
Did
we know that?
Glass.
I totally missed that. Would David or Webb, would you like to address that?
I had submitted that we put our graphics on the glass, but I thought the suggestion was made in the discussion following the idea of putting it on the awning. I did not make any submission asking to put it on the awning.
Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Darnell. To be clear, yes, Annette is correct. The application included some information about the signs being on the side lights of the doors. But that is a separate application, and I doubt it will make it to your all's review because it won't meet the size requirement.
Okay.
But the point that staff was making earlier is that sign currently above the awning is probably going to come down, or that's staff's understanding from this application that sign will come down. So per the discussion at the last DRB meeting, there's going to be a void there above that awning.
Yes, that's why it's an important to determine, even though signage is a separate submittal, in this case, it becomes architecturally important on where the sign is going to be in order to guide our discussion on this awning. So, so we will need some definite direction on that in order to make a decision on the awning, I would think. But let's finish the conversation.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I thought I would add this bit of information that might guide your all's decision or the applicants. We just confirmed that signage is allowed on awnings in Shelter Cove.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we will, let's go through the list. Was that Debbie? I can't see you, Debbie. Okay.
I wanted to say, the sign would come down that says, whatever it says, I can't see it. But I would still encourage the deeper sloped awning, typical of Talbot's. Even if it does have the sign on it, I think it will be easier to read with a deeper slope than the awning that's on there now. And if they put the signage on the side lights, I'm fine with that too. So either way, but I would like to see the deeper awning.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So let's get through the list and we'll hit on some of these issues again, I'm sure. Ms. Foss.
Okay, we're on the awning subject right now. I would like to see a steeper slope on the awning, and I think it being black and a steakhouse, it would look nice to have the name of the restaurant on the lip of the awning, but the way it exists now is too small to probably get the name on there. If Shelter Cove does indeed allow the signage on the awnings, I think it would look a lot sharper. It would read better than having it on the side lights. I know this is not in our jurisdiction, but if the signage is going to be gone from above, then we need to make sure that awning gets taken care of. Question 2, I think it's David. Is the bar side going to have bar seating up against those louvers, and the restaurant side going to have tables?
That is correct.
Okay. We talked about it the last time. There is no intention to put irrigation in the planters, whether they're brick or I'm going to say portable ones, that you were going to have someone water them as need be. I like staff's suggestion of doing the louvers just because of maintenance. I agree, we like to have our plants out there, and maybe they could put some potted plants in the restaurant area and water those, but if they die, they go away. But then because it's table seating, I wouldn't mind seeing the louvers at the table area being lowered maybe to the same height that the brick planters are being proposed now. That will allow people to have the view of the park while they're eating. I get the fact that the goosenecks are going, so that's good. And I'm okay with the bar being white. It makes it stand out. And I'm okay with the upper glass area, the transom being open. I see that they're wanting to kind of put signage up there, and that would help sort of advertise a little bit at night when it's closed or the lights are on. It says Oyster Bar, I think. Yeah. I don't think they knew how to render it, but they want to put signage up there. So I'm okay with that being open. Let me check my notes here. Oh, and even with the awning being more slanted, that'll help the awning go better with the metal ribs that are there. The one at the top is steeper. There we go. The bottom right there. I think it'll bring that whole front, make it look better. And then, okay, I think that's my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Yes, we have a lot of comments, and some of them are going in different directions, but trying to keep a tally here. I agree. I think the general consensus is the awning needs to be steeper, and I agree with that. It's probably, eyeballing it, it's probably the same height as the Talbot's awning right now. It's just the Talbot's awning isn't nearly as deep, so I think that affects the slope. But it's going to be a big awning. So that height on that Talbot's, and if you just go to the New York Pizza elevation, and that look like they're probably close to the same height right now. It's just the depth is different. But I do think it needs to be taller. But per my prior comment, how much taller really kind of depends on how much sign is going to be on it. Let me see let me just pick somebody here. Kathy, so do you think the awning needs to be twice as tall? 1.5 times as tall? How many pieces of siding up would you want it? What's going to fill up that space? Could you go to the elevation on a good front picture? Like how many?
You take it up to where, in my opinion, see where New York Pizza, the curved letters come down right there.
Yeah.
So the bottom of the N and the bottom of the A would be nice. If they're gonna put the sign on the awning, what they're gonna need to do is adjust that front flat lip so that they can get the signage on there. They don't want to put the signage on the slant. They need it right there where Chris is showing us. And so that needs to get deeper, taller.
Okay. So it's 6.5 boards tall right now, and you're adding half. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 3.
A little over 50% taller.
Yeah.
Maybe a little. Right. So it puts it approximately where the eave breaks, where the rake starts, right there. Right. It's pretty much the bottom of the N. And I think that would fill it up nicely. So, yeah, I agree with that direction. Is there anybody who thinks it should be taller, smaller, shorter? Or is everybody, Annette, what do you think? That.
Sorry, were you just asking me?
Kathy's suggestion that the height of the awning goes up to just below the NNEA, kind of right where the rake breaks, where the overhang
I think that's
breaks.
good. I think that's good, and at least, I mean, I don't know if it's the same size exposed lap siding on the Talbots, but as we were on that view, I counted that it was 10 siding boards tall, which this essentially would get to about 10 or 11 siding boards, so I think that would be great.
Okay. And on the, just thinking about what we're going to see under that awning, we're going to see a good bit of siding under the awning. Everybody okay with that? It's not going to be all glass, so. But you won't really see that until you're, where that handicap sign is. Probably you'll begin to start to see what's behind the awning, I should say. Okay, I'm fine with that. Making the awning larger. I'll go with the flow on what the majority believes on the brick versus the louvers. I'm of the opinion that I don't think anything good's going to grow there unless Judd or David tells me differently, just because I can stretch my fingers 7¼ inches. And that's like a potted plant that I have sitting by my kitchen sink, that doesn't get very big. So I would be afraid that it just will eventually end up being an empty planter, which, worst case, you could put a row of brick on top of it and cap it, and it becomes a brick wall. But I don't mind there being louvers on one side and brick on the other. I'm fine with that. I just worry about the success of it being a planter. So I'm going to let whoever makes the motion on that go in whatever direction they want to go. And we'll see how that comes out. I like the bar design, the back wall. I think it looks nice. Trim color. The sliding barn doors, I like the transoms up above. I think it looks nice as it is. Now that we have clarifications on the light fixtures, that there will be no light fixtures there. I like it. I don't see any problem with that. I think the new louver design, they have responded to what we asked. It lines up with the brick coursing, and it sets back, and it kind of snuggles up under that existing piece of granite. So I'm fine with that. Awnings, logo signage, that's separate. Outdoor fans, I'm fine with what's submitted. And the wall lanterns, we've already hit on. They would need to, Mr. Molesky made an excellent comment that part of the beauty of it, or part of the nice look of that light fixture, is the fact that you see the bulb, but we know that we can't do that. So I think the light fixture is fine. How, David, do you know how high off the walking surface those will be placed?
I do not. I did not measure the existing light fixture height, so I can't answer that.
Okay, I'm just looking at the seating layout and where the lights are, and they're kind of seem to be above one chair. Just want to make sure I did not pay attention to where the existing lights are either, so I'm guilty of that too. But just so somebody doesn't bang their head on it when they get up from their chair. But the fixture itself, I'm fine. And no, you already clarified there would be no exposed conduit. So.
Mr. Chairman, this is Chris. I have a question while we're looking at the lights. Based on this light layout plan, I see two fixtures here and here, and
the tall ones.
The tall ones, yes.
Yeah.
Let me go back to the. Now, hold on just a minute, please. I guess my question is, and maybe I'm not aware, but this looks like it's all wall. This glass is all this wall is all glass. So
Uh,
where are those two light fixtures going to be mounted, David?
That plan. And I think I might have made an error in placing it on the plan, to be perfectly honest.
so those,
They go on the other side of the door on that wall where there's a siding surface. The
So
other,
on the bar side?
well, the door that goes out into that dining area, there is a glass wall and there is a siding wall to the left as you walk out the door towards the park. And I think I might have just positioned that wrong on the plan.
Okay, so just to be clear, no new wall is being added for these fixtures, or these fixtures are not being put on those the storefront between the windows, the glass.
Is correct.
Hey,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chris, I'm going to interject real quick. I looked at it on Street View, and it looks like there's the opportunity for 3 fixtures across that facade underneath that overhang. But I understand where David's going with it. There's definitely walls associated with it, but there could even be one in the middle. There's a wall section in the middle if he so chooses. So
Great, thank you.
right, thanks. Chris, while you have the floor, does staff have any replies to all the discussions so far?
No, sir, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Would anyone like a second round with the questions, Annette?
Not to kind of beat a dead horse, but if I'm understanding correctly, the oyster bar, the only lighting in the oyster bar will be 2 wall sconces to the right and left of that bar. Is that correct, David?
There are existing fixtures over the bar itself to provide lighting over the bar. Those 2 fixtures are just going in place of what is an existing wall lantern of the style that's used throughout Shelter Cove.
Okay, so the box fixture that's on this sheet we're looking at does go to the left and the right of the bar where the goosenecks are shown?
Is correct.
Okay, all right. So the goosenecks were embellishment that you had referred to earlier, but there is actually 2 fixtures there, one on each side, and it's the tall box fixture.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. That'll have to be noted on the plans because I don't think it's on that plan that we're looking at. I can't quite see. Let me see if I can blow it up on my side here.
I don't see it noted, Mr. Chairman. You're correct.
Yeah. All right. So to follow up on Annette's, we're going to have 3 fixtures in the seating area, the restaurant area, one at the right, one at the left, and one in the middle. And we're going to have 2 at the bar. Is that correct, David?
I'd intended to do 2 at each side.
Okay.
To place a 3rd in the middle in the dining area, which I agree with. So that would be 5.
Okay. 3 in the dining, 2 in the bar. Okay, so any motion that's made should include that as a condition, if that's where we go. Go ahead, Annette. You still have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I guess I thought it was a good comment sort of starting to ask about the fan because I'm wondering why it's nickel if the light fixtures they look black, but they might be dark bronze. I'm just especially seeing that the fan comes in. Are they black or are they bronze?
Those are black.
So, and I see that the fan comes in a black also. So could it be the black with the mahogany so that we just get another there?
From a design perspective, I believe that it could. I would I'm going to ask the owners about it because I think they may have interior finishes that tie with that nickel finish on the fan, as the fan blades do. So I will have to
I
find out.
guess I'm going to argue that the light fixture that's directly there is more prominent than something that may be on the interior. And then just as my sort of to conclude my second round of comments, I do think that the oyster bar and ding are pretty different in their feel, and I'm a proponent of the brick over a freestanding planter, despite I do understand the challenge of the planting, but what I would sort of hesitate to see is two different height louvers, especially if it shrinks too much, then you end up having just 3 or 4 slats, and the differentiation in seating type and restaurant type to me then disappears. And my preference is for the brick over a freestanding planter, because this way we only have the introduction of one new material, namely the louver, versus a louver and a planter. But I will let myself get guided by landscape architects on this.
I think that's a convincing argument. By shortening the wood louver, it would just look like a squatty louver on the dining side. Is that kind of your point, Annette? Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think the brick looks nice. And even if that were a brick wall and not necessarily a planter, if something's not going to survive in there, I would just cap it and make it a brick wall. But I don't know that something's not going to make it in there. But all right, anyone second? Were you finished, Annette?
Mr. Gantaman.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Molesky.
Yeah, when we're talking about lights, I think there's a picture of the front door with the awning. I'm sure Chris loves digging up those pictures. I'm sure you could find that pretty quick, though. But I think that there was also a couple existing sconces to the left and right of the doors in one of the pictures that I saw right there. Will those lights also be switched now, just so they're consistent with everything that you're proposing?
We have not discussed changing those lights because they're outside of the 2 areas that were controlled by the restaurant, and that's Shelter Cove. So we thought to leave them alone because those would match the rest of the plaza.
So what you're saying is that light fixture that I'm seeing right there is consistent throughout the entire plaza?
Throughout all the buildings around it, yes.
This is Chris. Just to clarify, Dan's right and not right. I'm sorry, David, excuse me. That is a fixture that's commonly used in Shelter Cove, but there are other fixtures that are tied to the aesthetic of the whatever store. The one that comes to mind is the what's the purse store? The Fusky, what is Martina? Thank you. Sorry. There's different light fixtures at different stores.
So that's what I would throw out. If we're talking about lights and consistency and all that kind of good stuff, it seems like a good opportunity not to get you to spend another $500 or $600 on a couple more fixtures, but just to tie everything in, if that's what we're talking about here. And since I have the floor, I'll beat a dead horse again on this awning. And I'm still curious what kind of transom exists there, because if we double the height of that awning, I understand that even though no one specifically said it, maybe there is some concerns that this awning becomes too dominant if it becomes twice as big. And that's why I wonder if there's any merit if that awning perhaps could just be elevated. I'm taking a guess here at the height, but maybe if it gets elevated another 12, 18 inches perhaps, so it's perhaps flush with the transom, then this way we're still raising it up, we're taking care of that void, but we're not leaving ourselves with this hypothetical 10-foot tall awning that might be unsightly as well. And then also, again, I'll keep talking while I have the floor here. In the bar area, as nice as it looks aesthetically, I don't know if that's too much white, as being someone who's relatively new to the board, even though I guess I've been here for a little bit now. I remember everybody talking about, we don't necessarily want all white, we don't want all black. I don't know if all of that white there is too dominating of a color with it being just all white. And again, that's just a comment for the board to discuss. Anyway, that's my only additional comments.
Yeah, I think Shelter Cove's a bit of an anomaly. There's black in there, there's white in there, in places that we wouldn't have allowed it otherwise in a different project. I think there's precedent here, and those were, I believe, all colors that were approved way back when this project was. Shelter Cove has an approved palette, and I would assume, Chris, that this is within their approved palette because the trim's that color, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right, so hopefully that answers John's question on that. Okay. All right, I can't see everyone, so if anyone else wants to add any comments, pipe up. Okay, I can see Kathy. Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm gonna go back and agree with Annette's comment on the brick instead of the lower louvers, but I agree with you, Michael, in that maybe it's just better off being a flat brick top and not a planter, so that we get away from having the probability of plants not living in there.
Yeah, that's my Judd or you or David. What do you think?
The thought I had is that if we were to do an 8-inch brick wall set back where it keeps the same profile from the front elevation, but it creates a space that, if you look in the pictures, is currently occupied by pavers set into the concrete. We could take those pavers out and create enough depth, probably get about 16 inches or so, to put the boxwoods in front of that low wall, in between the columns.
And still have a brick wall?
Brick wall, maintain that feel, maintain that privacy, but have more room to grow the plants and keep them out of the pedestrian path.
I like that idea. It goes with what we've always recommended for people.
Can you say that again, Kathy? I was getting
I like the idea of putting the boxwoods in the ground, take those pavers up and put them in the ground. That's what we always suggest to people to do anyway.
Not going to hit any footings under there or anything? I'm afraid there's a footing under that column.
Mr. Chairman,
yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think that paver that you're seeing there has been added to take up what was an existing planted area.
Ah, so we're reverting.
I guess my point is I don't think there's a footer under that for those. I could be wrong, and David could speak to, maybe David can speak intelligently to that.
I believe there would be a small pier footing, but I don't believe they would do a continuous footing there. And as you said, if there was plantings done around the plaza in situations such as this, I would believe that there's enough soil underneath that paver that we could just plant in that area directly.
Okay. All right. Let's try to get somewhere with this. Like I said, we got a lot of ideas floating out here. Would anyone like to make a motion? These several conditions, are you it seems like the one thing that most everybody agrees on is the canopy getting bigger. But the question came up from Mr. Molesky, what's behind it, which is what also I had brought up. What are we going to see behind it? Is there a lot of siding and a little transom? How's that going to look? Can you just make a motion to say make it 3 feet taller, or do we need to see it? And we've thrown out a lot of options on the planter, which I think we're all kind of divvied up on that. Anybody want to try to do a wrap up on this before we make a motion? Annette, go ahead.
I'll try to, because to me, the two key items seem to be what happens at the restaurant patio and what happens to the awning. I think we need to see it. And in that sense, I think it could be staff and 2 DRB members. I think the idea of raising it is a good one. I think the idea of steepening it, but we really need to see an elevation to be able to know when it dominates too much. So I think, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think the entire board would need to, I don't think it needs to come back to the board. My leaning is, and I think this is where we just maybe need to see where the rest of the board is, of brick wall with the boxwood in the ground, I think is a great idea for that restaurant side, and then louvers as proposed on the other side. And maybe if we just kind of go through the board one more time to see where people stand on those, then we can make, we can do a motion with conditions.
Okay. What about, Judd had brought up that if we do a solid brick wall, we're creating a dam. We'd have to have a mouse hole in there or something to.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's easy enough to
Okay.
either have
Since it's,
some weep holes or a brick missing, or, you know, to create a pierced brick at the very base course or something like that. I don't think that it
Okay.
certainly needs to be addressed.
all right. Anybody not leaning in that general direction? Judd?
I'm certainly in favor of the brick wall with the plantings in the ground. And the idea of having the gaps in the brick, I'd even recommended so far as when we review this brick wall, it's going to have to be so thin that I'd even recommend a pierced brick wall. But I'll leave that to the designer to provide a detail and a section for that brick wall to be reviewed by staff and DRB member.
Okay. Mr. McAllister and Debbie, I can't see you, so if you're out there raising your hand, I'm not ignoring you. I can't see you. Do either of you have anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in disagreement with any of the conversation that we've had so far. I mean, like I said initially, I'm not against the brick wall or brick planter as it was submitted. I just think we all have to be realistic on the expectations of how the planting will do. I'm good with planting where the pavers are. Kind of to Judd's point, what he was getting at, I'm not sure what the construction of that brick wall looks like. You know, I think it'd be worth a DRB member looking at that. But I'm not in disagreement with anything that's been said.
Okay. Yeah, pierced brick might look nice. But okay, so I think we've got a general direction. You know, keep in mind staff's recommendation was for denial. So if you guys, if any of you feel that we can do a good approval with conditions with a further review, then I'm on board with that. Annette, do you want to take a stab at it?
Sure. I'm
Okay.
just writing down notes to summarize. So let me, bear with me one split second
All
here.
right. Well, let me officially ask for a motion. I don't think I said that word in there anywhere. Annette, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion. I'm missing the DRB number as it's not on the staff sheet, so if somebody can fill that one in for me. My motion is for DRB number. Chris, help me, please.
002198-2020.
Thank you. For approval with the following conditions. The louvers at the Oyster Bar as submitted. At the restaurant bar, that the infill between the piers be a brick wall. The detail needs to be provided, whether that is a solid or a pierced brick wall, but it needs to address the drainage off the patio and will have an approximately 16-inch wide in the ground planting area with boxwoods in it. The light fixtures at the Oyster Bar to the bar to be the box fixtures. The restaurant area to have 2 light fixtures on wall area. The fan finish to be reviewed with the owner of potentially going to black to match the light fixtures. And the 2 front light fixtures at the entry to match the box fixtures. And the awning, I don't believe I talked about the awning yet, to provide drawings for the awning, which the options to be looked at are to raise the existing awning or to steepen the slope of the awning, with a recommendation to have the vertical face of that awning be taller so that it could accept signage if so desired. The bar millwork component approved as submitted. I believe that concludes my motion.
Any discussion or amendments to the motion? Kathy?
I'm sorry, Annette, did you mention that the light fixtures need to have the frosted glass?
I did not, thank you. I would like to amend my motion that the light fixtures per LMO must have the frosted glazing.
Mr. Chairman, staff.
Yes, Chris.
Staff would like a couple of clarifications.
Okay.
The number of light fixtures in the restaurant area, you said 2 on the wall. I thought that the discussion was that there were going to be 3, because there were 3 possibilities to put lights on walls in the restaurant area. The other thing is the idea that there would be planting in front of a brick wall, but that those pavers would come out and planting would go between the columns, and then there'd be a brick wall behind it. And then third, is there a requirement for the awning adjustment to be reviewed by just staff or staff and DRB member?
Go ahead, Annette.
Thank you. I guess the 2 or 3 fixtures in the restaurant, I have to admit I was then unclear on. So I don't know if somebody can help me out on that number.
Well, there are 3 wall areas where they could go. and one of them appears to be way out on the sidewalk from looking at the plan. So I don't know if you can actually get a fixture on that wall. David Robertson, can you tell us if there's enough room on that far right wall?
Yes, there is a wall space there
Yeah.
where the arced area begins from to the right of that column. That's a
Okay.
small set, and there is so we want to station.
Okay, so there would be three then in that.
Okay.
And Chris's other point was review by staff and 2 DRB members.
Correct. Review by staff and 2 DRB members. And as far as the restaurant patio, yes, a brick wall that is set back inboard of where there are brick pavers in the ground right now. And those brick pavers get removed, and that 16-inch area becomes planting, in-ground planting area. So the brick wall would be past the center line of the pier.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the motion unless there's any further discussion. Again, I can't see David McAllister or Debbie. Okay, we have a motion with conditions. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second from Ms. Foss. So we will, as you're called, please vote yes or no. Zendaya, would you please call roll?
Ms. Lippert,
Yes?
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Molesky,
Yes.
Mr. Karstens,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes, so motion with conditions passes with 2 DRB members to review it when it comes back. So hopefully that can help y'all expedite things. So thank you, Webb and David. You guys, unless you guys have anything to add before you sign off, we'll move on.
Very much for your time to you, Mr. Gentleman, and all the board members, and thank you for consideration in this matter. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
Great day. Take care.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is signage. Is that next? Hold on. Awesome. Center sign, DRB 002144-2020. And I will turn it over to Shay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is for the signage proposed with the Harris Teeter Fuel Center on Office Park Road. It includes proposals for one new two-sided freestanding sign, logos on the kiosk, and pump identification numbers. Pump graphics have not been proposed at this time. The new freestanding sign would match the existing Harris Teeter sign but be scaled down from those proportions. The applicant will also be updating the tenant panels on the existing Harris Teeter sign, at which time the copy colors would change to match those approved with this application. The new sign proposed for the Fuel Center would have a sign structure made of aluminum. It would consist of 2 square columns painted with a fine sand texture and an aluminum standing seam roof topper. The base of each column would be wrapped with trim, and decorative aluminum support arms will be placed at the top of each column and connect with the roof topper to match the existing Harris Teeter design. The proposed aluminum sign panel would be mounted between the 2 columns, and the sign would be two-sided. The proposed sign copy would be raised applied letters and include the business name and logo, address, and manual changeable copy for pricing. The colors proposed for the sign structure, roof topper, and support arms would match the existing Harris Teeter sign. The proposed colors for the sign copy would be green and red to match the existing green roof topper and a previously approved alternative to red for Harris Teeter. Uplighting is being proposed, but staff is recommending an alternative to better obscure the lighting. The location of the sign and landscape plan would be finalized as part of the sign permit. Staff has already worked successfully with the applicant to significantly modify the plans for the freestanding sign from what was initially proposed. But the following additional changes are also recommended that would be made prior to approval of the sign permit. 1, change the sign face material from aluminum with applied copy and graphics to sandblasted 1-inch cedar panels with 1.5-inch border in nebulous white to match the existing Harris Teeter sign. Leave the surface directly behind the changeable copy and tracks smooth. 2, change all copy to Sherwin-Williams iron ore and the logo can remain as proposed. 3, reconfigure the sign face to move the address to the top and add a 1.5-inch vertical line between the business name and logo and the pricing information to create the look of 2 separate panels. Reduce the copy size and adjust the spacing on the pricing side as needed, and the address must be a minimum of 4 inches. 4, change the uplighting to downlighting with recessed linear fixtures mounted underneath the roof element. 5, a landscape plan utilizing evergreen planting would be prepared by staff with the sign permit. The proposal also includes a request for aluminum channel logos to be located on 3 sides of the kiosk. However, staff is not recommending approval for these. Should the DRB approve these, the size would need to be addressed at the time of the sign permit. The proposed pump numbers would be located on the canopy columns and match the colors on the freestanding sign also. Staff has already worked with the applicant to remove background logos and modify colors and does not have additional changes to request on these. Staff is recommending approval of the application with conditions that were previously mentioned, in addition to any future graphics on the pumps would match the colors approved in this application. And now I'll walk through the presentation. Here you can see the location on Office Park Road. We have Greenwood Drive here and Harris Teeter. This is the existing Harris Teeter sign. Adjacent signage. And then the sign package submittal. These would be the logos, aluminum channel letters on the kiosk. These would be the pump identification numbers. This is the proposal for the new freestanding sign. And just to point out here, I would like to see more separation between the business identification and the pricing side, and the addition of a border that would mirror the existing white border found on the existing Harris Teeter sign. This would be the location for the kiosk graphics. And I believe that that's pretty much all of the location would need to be finalized as part of the sign permit, and the site is just under construction now, so it was hard to identify what the conditions would be. So I wanted to work with them to finalize that location and ensure that it's equally separated from the adjacent signage as much as can be and off of the pathway as well. And that's also the reason for addressing the landscape plan at that time with the sign permit. And that concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions.
Shay, could you address that what you were talking about with the 3 sides and show us
the kiosk?
Yeah, please. Just further explain that.
So there are the channel aluminum channel graphics proposed on the kiosk for the gas station. the most recent gas station that we've had that's similar to this is the Kroger station, and we did not approve any graphics on the kiosk itself. So to be consistent with that, staff was not recommending that we have that we approve graphics on the kiosks. Should we approve those, they would need to be scaled appropriately down to 10% of the facade size.
Okay, thank you. That explains it to me. All right, thank you, Shay. Is the applicant present? And if so, could you please identify yourself?
Hey, this is Stephanie with Casco Signs.
Hi, Stephanie, you the only one present for this? Or
I
are
do
you the only
believe,
one speaking?
yeah, I do believe Darren Martin is also with us.
All right, would
Yeah.
you like to, would you like to add anything to the presentation?
Darren, do you have anything you'd like to add or clarify?
Mr. Ganseman, this is Zendaya. I show that Mr.
Yeah.
Martin is unmuted. He may have to do it on his side.
Oh, okay. I can't see. Darren, you'll have to unmute if you're there.
I'm Skyping him now as well, so that.
I believe he dropped off and maybe is trying to come back in. That's what it looks like on my end.
Okay.
So maybe he
Well,
was
while-
having trouble with his muting and unmuting.
It's quite possible. He has seen my Skype, so we'll see what he comes back with, or if he pops back on.
Mr. Martin, I show that you're back online. You'll have to unmute and undo your video from your side.
So he must be having some troubles, but he's telling me, we're okay with the additional recommendations that have been given today. Shay's been great to work with, so we can certainly continue this discussion regarding those additional changes.
All right. Okay, thank you. And just hang tight with us in case anyone has any questions.
Sure.
Just as we'll go through the list, and everyone, you can, when we get to ultimately, when we get to the end, we can give an approval or whatever with staff conditions included. So unless there's specific ones you don't agree with or agree with, you might want to point those out as we go through the list. So let's start with Mr. McAllister.
All right. When I started looking at this and coming up with my list, to be honest, I am really in agreement with all of staff's comments. I'm not really in favor of the logos on the kiosk, and especially hearing that it would have to be scaled down to 10% of the kiosk facade, then I think it just gets lost and is not going to be effective in terms of any form of identification. I really like all of staff's comments. The only one that I'm don't have a strong opinion on is regarding the changing the uplighting to downlighting. I realize that with this sign, it kind of lends itself to doing downlighting just with the roof, but I don't really have a strong opinion about that. But otherwise, I think copy should be changed to, I'm familiar with the iron ore, and I think that would be a good suggestion. I don't want to sound redundant, but I'm on board with staff comments.
All right, thank you. Mr. Karstens.
I too am on board with staff comments in regards to the treatment on the kiosk and the sign itself, lending the fact that there is that existing Harris Teeter sign out there as something to make sure that we are in agreement with as far as these two signs making sense together. I will say that with the tightness, when it comes to the site plan for the sign and the landscape treatment, with the tightness of that driveway that's closest to Office Park and that cluster of trees that's going to be kept there, I think that there's not going to be the opportunity to have that sign sit on that corner. It's going to have to be more in the middle of the block when it comes to the property itself. So I think that the applicant just needs to be aware that there's some difficulties when it comes to the trees that are within the right-of-way and the setback that are being kept. And looking at it right now, I mean, we've got a cluster of water oak, and then there's a group of pines. It's just they're going to have to be understanding that there's a certain amount of size for that sign, and there's a lot of trees to be kept. So we're trying to make sure that their sign is as visible as possible, but also staying away from that bike path and placing it along that streetscape appropriately. So I just want to make sure that Shay's on board as far as the reviewing that in field and making sure that that has the appropriate screening when it comes to that sign itself. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Judd. Hold on, I lost my place here. Ms. Lippert.
I agree with staff comments. The only thing that jumped out at me is if one looks at on page 5 of 10, side A and end view, it's called out that there's to be a 12-inch bracket, both on the sides and the front. However, the end view shows that there's only a 9-inch overhang of the roof, so the 12-inch bracket would project. And in looking at the existing Harris Teeter sign, it shows a consistent bracket size, and so I guess it's somehow that needs to be adjusted so that the 12-inch bracket fits under the roof overhang. That's my only additional comment.
That's a good catch. Stephanie or Shay, either one of you want to reply to that?
It's quite possible because we pulled those off of the original drawings for the Harris Teeter sign. So it may be a typo on our side. It can certainly be adjusted. It definitely would not overhang from the roof.
Okay, and we'll include that as I would assume we will include that as a condition in our motion when we get there. Were you finished in that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Molesky.
No new comments other than that's some good math on the fly there, Miss Lippert, on putting all that together. So I'm jealous that I didn't find that. Good job.
Yeah, you saw that. She just went before you, right?
No, I'm honest. I did not see
right.
that.
Oh, you stole my comment.
I'm impressed.
You stole my comment. All right, thank you, John. Miss Rimke.
I'm on board with all of staff's comments. So I think that everything is fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, because I'm getting a message here. It says you can't hear me. No, I'm on board with Steph's comments. I think we're okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Ms. Foss?
I agree with staff comments. I agree that we shouldn't have the logos on the kiosk at the 10% of the facade size. They would just be meaningless anyway. I did want to make sure, I like the idea of the lights under the canopy on the sign, but I want to make sure that there is no exposed conduit running up the side of the sign or showing underneath that roof. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, all very good comments. Shay, do you have anything to add on the tail end of this?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Unless there's anybody with a follow-up, I'll go ahead and make the motion if everybody's okay with that. Since I think we all are in agreement with it, it'll make it easier. Last request. I don't see any. Okay. I'll make a motion for Harris Teeter fuel center signs, DRB 002006-2020, approval with the following conditions. All staff comments as presented will be included with the following additions. The downlighting is preferred. However, make sure no exposed conduit is visible. I guess that's what exposed means. The final placement will be coordinated with staff. The brackets are to be a consistent size and to fit within the overhang. There may have been a typo on the drawing, but that will be resolved with staff. And any further additions, second round amendments? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Mr.
yes.
Chairman, could you please update the number to DRB 2144-2020 for your motion?
2144-2020. Sure. The prior motion is for Harris Teeter Fuel Center signs DRB-002144-2020. Right? Is there Ms. Foss?
Thanks, Michael. I just wanted to make sure, because I don't see in the typed notes from staff that she made the notion that all future pump graphics to match the approved signage graphics.
Yes, sir. If you would like to reference staff's recommendations to include in the motion, that would cover the logos, future pump graphics, and all the revisions to the freestanding sign, in addition to those that you've just added.
Is that not on? Okay, when I get to number 5 on the list, it has the 3 sides to the kiosk, which is not approved. And then the next line says proposed pump numbers. Is that what you're talking about, Kathy?
Yes, and now I see it's there. I didn't see it before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything further? Okay. Motion submitted. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I heard Mr. McAllister. We have a second from Mr. McAllister. Zendaya, would you please run roll?
Ms. Lippert,
Yes.
Ms. Foss,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Ms. Remke,
Yes.
Mr. Molesky, Mr. Karsten,
Yes.
Mr. Gentleman.
Yes. Motion with conditions passes unanimously. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us.
Absolutely.
And now we will move on to Board business. Today's board business is discussion of the overhead lighting installation at US 278 and Yacht Cove Crosswalk. I believe, or at least I hope everyone's had a chance to go see it in the daytime as well as the nighttime. So we'll turn the presentation back over to Chris.
I just kind of wanted to set the parameters for this discussion, and then hopefully just get some feedback from you all. It is not the installation at the Yacht Cove intersection on 278 was a prototype installation. It was meant to be installed so that it could be reviewed, feedback taken. The concept is to light other pedestrian crossings on 278. Currently, there are 9 crossings that have been identified to be lit. But again, it is not a foregone conclusion that those would be lit. Currently, Town Council is considering additional crossings. So what I would like to do today is get your input, or other staff has asked for your input on this installation. You all were very concerned about the installation being in keeping with island character when you approved it. And so there were several things that you did to make sure it was in keeping with island character. Key among those was lowering the height of the light standards. But what that did was that increased the number of lights at the intersection. So I would, again, going back kind of 2 approaches to this, I would like to know what you think about this installation, and is it in keeping with island character? And then on a separate issue, what do you think about lighting other pedestrian crossings on 278, and would that be in keeping with island character? Having said all that, the survey that was in open town hall considered other things like cost and safety and things like that. You are in I think the enviable position to only consider aesthetics, and that's all that we're asking for. So given that, I have on the outline that you received pulled out the aesthetic questions, and I think I added one for you all to consider. So the first one is, have you seen the new lights at night? Has anybody not seen them? What you got any feedback? What do you think about that?
We'll just keep this an open forum. So yeah, Annette, why don't you lead it off, and anybody can piggyback on as we go.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess I have one question to staff, whether an actual foot candle measurement has been taken out there. The reason I ask that, I find it extremely bright. And I also have to say that normally and this is just sort of personal comments, so maybe not quite on the aesthetics, but the aesthetics being the brightness. Normally I have no trouble driving at night. I found these light fixtures to be extremely glary and very difficult to drive under and then to readjust. And it creates a red glow in the sky as one is about 3/4 of a mile away. So in that sense, to me, it does not maintain island character because it does create light pollution.
To answer that, the lights were installed at one of the requirements was that and it came from you all, that they be 3,000 Kelvin or less, and they are at 3,000 Kelvin. The brightness, that's just the temperature that the light's burning at. The brightness of the fixtures was dictated by SCDOT requirements. And so the minimum brightness was what is maintained.
Hey, Chris, of all of the crossings, how many of them are not at a traffic control point, like at a signalized intersection?
Judd, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure, but most of them.
Okay, I just make the remark if we're trying to obviously work aesthetics with safety, you know, it's understood that there's a controlled access crossing, and the one in Gallup Cove obviously is much more of is a free movement crossing. So, you know, the idea of this being applied for these 9 locations where you have, you know, pedestrians crossing at, I know the one over by Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, and then would there even be the crossing that's there near Old Wild Horse? Is that also going to be counted as one of these crossings?
I don't believe that crossing made it to the 9. I believe the 9 end, if you're coming up from the south end, in there at Sea Turtle Marketplace and Northridge, that crossing.
Okay. Yeah, I'll echo Annette. I mean, it definitely did seem like it was very much. You know, we've done so well on the island of having light sources that if they're relatively close to the road, you just don't get that impending brightness. And I mean, it certainly brings your attention to that's a much more illuminated area. Not to say that, you know, with the way the fixtures were, it made me more aware of people. But I mean, it certainly was a interruption in the travel. So I guess if there's meant to be something to shake you out of driving along 278, it certainly satisfied that.
Mr.
Chairman. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Carstens, that was a segue into the public comment that you received in the open town hall, and I'll read it into the record. Quote, "We do not want any overhead lighting added anywhere on the island. One reason we chose to move here was because of the preservation of the night sky and the natural environment elements." End quote.
Yep. Now there were more comments on the survey, right? Can you? But this is the only one that was submitted for this meeting. Is that how that worked?
Yes, that is correct. This is the only comment that was submitted for this meeting in open town hall portal. Now, there was a survey for this whole thing, and it was multiple pages long. There were over 100 comments, I believe.
Yeah, it was 120 pages long, I think. And the majority felt that way, that, you know, they don't want the lights. But again, our task here is to kind of bluntly say, is it island character? Okay. That's kind of a yes or no question that each of us needs to answer, and we're going to keep a little tally here. And then, but if I forget who all was on the board. I was on it. I know Debbie was. Who was on there when were you on it, Kathy? Yeah, Kathy. John, were you on it? John wasn't here yet. Okay, so I know Annette and Judd weren't. David, were you on it?
No, I was not.
Okay, so it was. So you can blame or congratulate the 3 of us. The other option was a standard that was much taller, but only 2 per side instead. But we keeping it at and we used the traffic light standards as the benchmark. We wanted it to be about the same height as it would be at a stoplight and not above the trees. So in that condition, I think during the daytime, it's successful because for the most part, it kind of goes away when you're driving past in the daytime because it's below the tree line and it's the same height as a standard would be, and it's painted the same color as a traffic light standard would be. But in the nighttime, it's bright. Annette hit it right, hit it right on the head. And if there's 9 more of these or 8 more, and this is the 9th one, whatever it may be, it also could come to the point to where they just decide to illuminate the entire length of 278 instead of having these light dark patches. That is a possibility, which in that case, island character's pretty much out the window, I believe. So just for the record, I'd like to get everybody to at least say, yes, this is island character, or no, this is not island character, and then expound on your answer. So let's just go to Kathy next. We got Judd and Annette, and you guys can come back in at any time, but let's just go with, we have 2 no's so far. So.
No, this is not island character. Yes, I was on the board when we discussed this, but we were still, our hands were tied by the South Carolina DOT restrictions. We were basically forced to make the aesthetics fit however way we could with what they were telling us they had to do. And I don't think we have to light up these intersections, especially not this bright. I agree the fixtures that we selected kind of go away during the daytime, but they're still too tall and they still stand out as something very, very modern compared to our traffic lights. And I think if it's possible, we just make people cross at the walks, the signaled walks. Thanks.
Okay. Debbie?
Chris, I think I heard you say a minute ago that we had lowered the lights, and in doing so, it made them brighter. But then I also think that I heard that we were at the minimum for the lighting requirements for an intersection. Did I understand all of that correctly?
Just a little, it needs to be tweaked just a little bit. By lowering the lights, Mr. Getman was talking about there being possibility of 2 light standards that were really high up, but you all decided to lower them. By lowering them, you required more light poles. So where there might have been only 3, I think there are 7 out there now. So that lower one just required more. Lowering the lights required more poles. The intersection is at the minimum brightness allowed by SCDOT.
Okay. I think if we all step back a minute in our memory, we'll remember that the reason this came about was because an 11-year-old girl was hit by a car on 278 because there was no light or very poor light available for her crossing the road. And for that reason, if we are at the minimum, if we can't do anything less, I think I'm going to have to agree with the situation that maybe we put a little bit different pole out there, but we need to make sure that we're safe for all of our visitors as well as our residents.
Okay. So if you're saying that we could, again, you're correct. Again, this is one of these situations where we're given something that says we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
How can you guys make it look good? That's kind of, if you had to boil it down to something. Debbie's suggestion is maybe we, and Kathy touched on it, maybe we pick a better light standard to help it. But that's just, you're just going to see that in the daytime.
Yeah. Also, if getting a shorter fixture made us go from 3 to 7 lights, maybe we should revisit the taller fixture so that we only have the 3 lights, 3 poles.
Yeah, my argument against that is now instead of from 3/4 of a mile seeing it, you're now going to see it from 1.5 miles or even farther, since there's no topography here. We're flat, so there's no hills to hide it. And if once it gets above the trees, it's very visible. It'd be like I don't know if you guys have seen Field of Dreams, the movie Field of Dreams. There's a shot of that at
Not
night.
that old.
Yeah, you can see it. Those are baseball size standards. You can see it for miles away, and that's what they wanted. But I think we also have a little bit of a thing is if all these are located generally where there's a hot spot, like we have the Shell station and the plaza on one side and the Hilton Head Diner on the other side, which are all relatively close to the road and are well lit, it makes that less noticeable, I think. You put one of these out in one of those lonely stretches where it's really actually dark, and it will be more impactful, I think. Just driving down, I was kind of looking where are all the hot spots. And by that, I mean that there's buildings on the left and the right, which makes sense that there's a crosswalk there because people are trying to get from this side to that side. Once you get to Northridge, you got some more hot spots. There's a gas station on one side, Sea Turtle on the other. A little farther down, there's apartments and Starbucks. So you've got some nighttime light. It's just, I would be curious if any of these are what I'll call in one of those dark stretches, where it really will be an island of light. I think it's hidden a little bit by this particular one by where we are because there's lights on the left and right, and a little farther down the road, Grant's Market at night throws out a lot of light. That gas station there, if anybody's paid attention to that, that's definitely a hot spot there. So, but let's keep going. So I'm going to put Debbie down as a no, but we could maybe change the light standards. Is that a fair answer, Debbie?
Fair. Thank you.
Okay. David McAllister, you want to go next?
Sure. I'll start by saying something positive. In the light in daytime, I actually do like the fixture. I don't disagree with Kathy's comment about them being kind of modern, but I think that's coming from, their sleek, their slim profile. And, I won't lie, I drove by several times during the day, and there was one time in particular where I was looking for them, and I totally missed them. Part of island character is being nature blending. I think the fixture that was selected does a good job. But as far as the lights at night, strongly feel like it is not island character. Dark sky and having no light pollution is a big part of what makes Hilton Head to me. And this just doesn't fit it, in my opinion.
All right. Thanks, Jay. We get you down as a no, but in the daytime, sort of yes.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fixture, but it's just not appropriate, I don't think.
Okay. Thank you. Who'd we miss? John, we haven't gotten to you yet. Or did we?
Sure.
No, we didn't. Okay.
So definitely, I do not think it meets island character or fits island character. Are these lights on from dusk to dawn, I guess, is how they're set on a timer or a...
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And so I guess, generally speaking, I mean, it's just a dangerous street to cross during the day or the night, you know what I mean? And I'm not sure if, obviously the light does bring it to your attention. Are there any discussions on the signaling where you actually push a button and then it has the blinking lights or something like they did by Coligny? Was that brought
There
up at
were
all for any consideration?
there were several options considered, and the option of the lights coming on when a button was pushed was thrown out. And John, I am sorry, I can't remember why it was thrown out. There was some discussion about signs that blink too. I think the thought process was that was even less in keeping with island character. The best option considered it just came that these overhead lights, and then it came to you all to look at how to keep them in island character as best possible.
Chris, you're right. We talked about, John, we talked about having the blinky lights or something that comes on when you push a button. A lot of towns have the little flashing lights in the crosswalk on the bottom, and everything was thrown out. The SCDOT said that anything flashing that's not on a constant would be too distracting to everyone. That was their excuse.
Yeah, I wish I had more to offer because, I mean, it's a terrible thing. But like I said, I just feel it's just a dangerous area to cross, during the day in the best conditions. It's a tough one. And adding lights at night, I mean, I don't know if that only encourages more people now to cross there and makes it even a bigger concern. But I wish I had more to offer.
All right. Thank you. Did everybody? Oh, okay. I guess it's my turn. Yeah. I think of the two solutions that we were presented with, we picked the right one for the reasons I previously stated. That once those lights get above the trees, you'll see it forever. And when I drove through it last night, when I get back, I live in HHP, and when you get back here, the streets are dark, and same in Sea Pines and beyond the gates, I guess is the best way to put it. It's still dark. 278 is a major highway. It is not a country road anymore. It might have been 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even. Yeah, I've been here almost 20 years, and it hasn't changed much in 20 years. But it's not a two-lane country road where you can really have night sky anymore. For safety, I think it needs to happen. But from an aesthetic standpoint, I'm in agreement with everyone that no, when the lights are on at night, it does not meet island character. But maybe island character doesn't necessarily apply to a divided highway where people don't obey the speed limit ever. The signs say 45 and they're going 55 and getting tailgated. It's a dangerous street, so a dangerous road. So I think presented with an either or, I think we picked the right solution. So that's my two bits. But anybody else? Chris, were there other questions or?
So just to kind of put a bow on it, what I'm hearing is that the prototype is not in keeping with island character, but it's the best that given the situation. What do you all think about continuing it and expanding it to 8 additional sites on 278? Do you think that would be a mistake and pose a problem for island character? Okay.
Yeah, I think the way everybody voted is that if it doesn't meet island character here, it's not going to meet island character anywhere.
Understood.
So this is where we separate what our charge is strictly from a design point, because you don't want this to get in the island packet and people write in and say, oh my God, the design board's insensitive to the safety of people. Well, that's not what we're being asked. We're being asked, does it look good? And I think, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. If anybody disagrees with that statement, please retort. But I think that's pretty safe to say from what everybody's been saying. So that if the powers that be deem that for safety purposes we need more of these, is this the right solution? Is what we should address. And I would strongly vote against making them any taller than they already are. And I agree with David McAllister that during the day, if you really didn't know to look for them, I think you'd drive past them a bunch before. I mean, how many times did you drive past them before you knew they were there would be the question. But at night, yeah, you see them. Doesn't fit. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, DRB board members. We appreciate your input on this, and it will be taken. Your input will be taken forward to town council when they consider the additional sites.
Yeah. This doesn't require. This was an informal, so there's no kind of vote or anything. Go ahead, Annette. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry, if I may just, I tried to kind of ask it at the beginning, and I understand you're saying the foot candles are per South Carolina Department of Transportation minimums, but I'm wondering, has a light meter, is that based on photometric calculations in a computer model, or has a light meter actually been taken out there to see what the foot candles are?
We haven't taken a light meter out. The intersection was engineered by a light design professional, so we're taking it at his word that it's designed to meet SCDOT requirements. A light meter has not been put on the intersection.
I would love to see an actual measurement taken, and I say that because I find it extremely bright, and I think it is important to, at times, take the best modeling efforts and then check reality against it.
Understood. Understood. I'll see if we can get that done.
And is the one last thing, is the suggestion that there's a button to push and the lights come on? Can we find out, just for peace of mind, why that was thrown out?
You know what? I will check to confirm. I believe the answer is that, like Kathy said, because it wasn't constant, that it would be too jarring when it was put on, and might cause a wreck. But I will check about that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I apologize. I have to go. I have a meeting.
Okay. All right. I think you may be excused, Kathy, if you need to go. Move on to staff report. Chris?
Yes, sir. Thank you. There were 2 minor corridors approved. 5 Augusta Lane was the addition of a generator within a perimeter fence. It's right there adjacent to a water tower. And Broad Creek Landing on Point Comfort Road, they were approved to paint their wall to match the building directly behind the wall, which is a gray. And that's the minor corridor report.
All right. Thank you. All right, everybody, with no other business before the board, this meeting is adjourned. See you next time. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.